So in my last video about budgeting for self-publishing authors, I mentioned that you should budget for title setup and revision fees. Some print-on-demand companies are going to charge you fees like that, and IngramSpark is one of the more expensive. So the question is, why should you publish your book with IngramSpark when its biggest competitor, KDP, is completely free? Here's a few things that you should know before you decide to self-publish with IngramSpark. First thing you should know is that it's more expensive. It's not cheap to publish with IngramSpark. While first-time users can set up their first title for free, any additional ones are going to cost you. Title setup fees are going to vary by the book format. There's a $49 fee for setting up a new print book, a $25 fee for setting up a new ebook. Currently, IngramSpark lets you set up the print book and the ebook as part of a bundle deal of $49, so the same cost as just setting up the print book, so you basically get the ebook for free. IngramSpark also charges you for revisions, and there's a good chance you're probably going to have to make like at least one revision down the line. So there's going to be a $25 fee for that, whether you're revising your cover or the interior file of your book, and it treats those separately. So if you make a change to the cover and the interior, then you're going to pay for both of those for a total of $50. And if that wasn't enough, the printing costs are a little higher as well, or higher than KDP's at least. Granted, IngramSpark offers a higher quality print than KDP does, so that should come as no surprise. An unfortunate consequence, however, is that your author royalties may suffer a bit. Like using IngramSpark and KDP's respective royalty calculators, here's what you can expect. For a 250-page 5x8-inch book, which is a pretty standard trim, listed at $9.99, you'd be making $1.40 in author royalties with KDP at a 60% royalty rate with $4 in printing costs, while with IngramSpark you'd earn 61 cents with $4.78 in printing costs. You can offset this by setting the list price a little higher, but you don't want to set it too high, otherwise you're going to risk losing potential readers because no one's going to want to buy a book that's overpriced. Now I'll admit this sounds pretty discouraging, especially when you could always just self-publish with KDP, which doesn't charge you any fees like this and has lower printing costs. But before you dismiss IngramSpark for all its frustrating fees, there's a few more things you should know. Next thing is that it has more formatting options. So yes, IngramSpark is generally more expensive than its competitors, but at least you'll be getting some value for your money. It offers far more formatting options than KDP does. Naturally, both of them offer paperback, hardcover, and ebook formats, but with IngramSpark you have a much bigger selection of trim sizes. IngramSpark has 40 preset trim sizes, and you can add your own custom ones, while KDP only has 16. I'll admit though that most self-publishing authors are probably just going to pick a 5x8 trim, so this may not be the biggest selling point for you. This though, for me, was the thing that made me pick IngramSpark, because I have a thing for kind of like very small trim but like really fat sci-fi novels. I had a copy of Dune when I was a teenager that was like that, and I just always really liked it. So I wanted my own to be like that, and it was kind of an unusual trim. I couldn't do it with KDP. There was a size that was similar to it, but it forced me to change the margins to be so narrow that the interior text just looked ridiculous. But IngramSpark let me do it, and it looked really cool, so I liked that a lot, and that's why I picked it. To be fair though, I can't really blame KDP for this too much because it was kind of a weird trim size. But if you want your book to be as customizable as possible in terms of the dimensions and everything, then IngramSpark is probably your best bet. Okay, then the next thing you should know is that IngramSpark has better distribution. IngramSpark boasts that it is the largest book wholesaler in the world, so it's no surprise that it has better distribution than KDP. If you self-publish with IngramSpark, you could hypothetically have your indie novel available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, and over 40,000 other bookstores and libraries. And although KDP does have an expanded distribution option, IngramSpark allows for such wide distribution by default. Now that sounds great, right? There's one thing you should keep in mind. Brick and mortar bookstores have to specifically order cartons of your book. So just because you self-publish with IngramSpark doesn't mean that your book is gonna end up in physical bookstores. If you've managed to build up a significant following, then switching to IngramSpark and having them print your book may allow you to get your book into bookstores if there's enough demand for it that they're gonna order it. But if you're a first-time author and you haven't found an audience and your book, really isn't known, your novel's likely to only be listed online. You'll see it on sites like Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com, but not in the actual bookstores. Fourth thing you should know is that the title setup is more complicated. IngramSpark is a lot pickier with their formatting standards than KDP is. So formatting the interior and the cover files is a little bit more complicated with IngramSpark than with KDP. I won't lie and say there weren't times where it took me several attempts to actually pass IngramSpark's review process. This is particularly true for the cover files because they require very specific color profiles and dimensions that can be a bit daunting if you're not used to graphic design. So if you're not comfortable creating the cover yourself, you may need to hire the services of a graphic designer who's going to be able to follow these guidelines. It's just that a cover made by an amateur, at least for a print book, is not likely to pass the review process, not because of it like, have looking bad or unprofessional just because the file specifications, they're a little confusing for someone who probably is used to doing like really simple editing. Okay, fifth thing you should know is that changes are slow to go live. Something I've noticed with IngramSpark is that it takes more time for book updates to go live on Amazon. Whether you've made edits to your interior file or chosen a different cover, it'll be a while before you see those changes reflected on the product page. If it's not a critical change, then I guess it's not a big deal. But if you caught a glaring error that somehow got through and you want to change it before anyone notices, you might not be able to with IngramSpark. Okay, everything I'm about to say is just anecdotal. I have no proof of this. From what I can tell, you'll have to sell whatever printed books are already there before your updated book becomes available for purchase. Again, I can't say this for sure, but it does seem to be the case, at least based on my own experience. So if IngramSpark went and printed a carton of your books, they'd have to sell all of those before they'll print a new one with those updates. When I updated the cover for my sci-fi novel, I only saw the cover updated on Amazon after I sold another 10 copies, which was the exact number of books that IngramSpark said would fill one carton. Same thing happened with my other novel, Devils and Sunday Hats. But whether I'm right or wrong, the point is the same. You won't see changes immediately. So if you do have errors you need to fix, there's a good chance at least a few readers are going to see that before you can get your edited product out there. If people are buying your book, that is. Okay, and finally, a positive thing to know about IngramSpark is that it has higher print quality. One of the biggest benefits to publishing with IngramSpark is their print quality. Novels printed on demand through IngramSpark are much likely to look professionally done, although some of that depends on you providing a good manuscript. But when I was self-publishing with KDP, I had times where it was printed completely misaligned, the binding was bad, or the colors on the front and back cover looked kind of faded. This hasn't happened to me with IngramSpark. Since moving to IngramSpark, I've seen the quality of my books skyrocket, which I'll be perfectly frank, most people who see a copy of my book in print end up saying that it doesn't look like the stereotype of a self-published book. Again, a lot of this depends on you following their formatting guidelines to the letter, but as annoying as those requirements may be, they do benefit you in the end, because you're basically prevented from ever uploading a cover that's gonna look bad in print. So if your files do pass the test, you can feel pretty confident that your book's gonna look professional. Ultimately, I guess the point of this video is that not all print-on-demand services are the same. Each of them has their pros and cons, and IngramSpark is no exception. I think I probably presented more cons than pros, which may raise the question as to why I even use IngramSpark. But like I said before, I like kind of weird trim sizes. My books have been published for a while, so I'm not really making any changes to them, so I'm not paying anything to IngramSpark anymore. It's more that at the very beginning, if you have any changes to make, that's when you end up paying money, but at this point, I really don't have to. So if you're setting a budget for yourself, like I was saying last week, think about the fact that if you decide to go with IngramSpark, you're gonna have to factor a lot of these things in. But in the end, the choice is yours. Everyone's gonna have their reasons for using KDP or their reasons for using IngramSpark or one of these other ones that are out there. But I think an important thing to remember is that you can change at any time. If you decide, okay, I've been using KDP, I don't want to do this anymore, you can go over to IngramSpark. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. And the same is true. You could go from IngramSpark to KDP, and that's it. That's the freedom that comes with self-publishing your book. So I would be interested to know which print-on-demand company all of you use. I have a feeling that KDP is going to be the most common one, but let me know, because I get why KDP is the most attractive option. It is free. So if you're not using KDP, definitely tell me, because I want to know why you're not using it. And if you found this video interesting or helpful at all, please like and subscribe, follow me on social media, and as always, thank you for watching. God bless.